Acerglyn version 2.0.
Okay, some of you may know. We made an Acerglyn once before. We were calling it Acerglyn. Acerglyn sounds a little bit nicer, more kid-friendly if you get my drift. And we used the dreaded leaves that will never be spoken of again. Notice I didn't even say what kind of leaves. You don't want to know. Don't go back and look. It's just not worth it. So instead, what we're going to do is move forward, and we're going to make a better Acerglyn. Now, Paul Borda wanted me to make an Acerglyn. He's one of our viewers, and he sent us this maple syrup, which is, there's the label so you can see it. This is a lot of maple syrup, okay? I wasn't expecting this, and it doesn't fit in our fridge, so we have to break this down into smaller containers because it does say refrigerate after opening, which, according to one of our Canadian friends, hi Kenny, he said, I have never heard of refrigerating maple syrup before. However, I grew up refrigerating maple syrup, so...
Well, Kenny also lives in Canada,
yeah,
and we live in Florida, so...
Yeah, so refrigeration is a different aspect.
There might be a thing there.
And first, I would also like to say, for all of our friends in Canada, I'm sorry, this is Vermont maple syrup. For all of our friends in Vermont, thank you, this is Vermont maple syrup. Not to say that Canadian is better, worse, different, or otherwise. We don't actually know. But this was sent to us, so we're going to use it, and we're thankful for it. Also, I set up this whole recipe, put all this thought into it, and I was going to use orange blossom honey. And then I read the container again, and it said wood-fired maple syrup. And I went, okay. And I opened it, and I smelled it. And when you smell it, it smells more like bochetted honey or caramel than just plain old maple syrup, which is making me rethink using this kind of honey, because does orange really go with that? So
I don't know, and I'm going to smell the honey too.
Well, I have a spoon.
I don't know. I think those would go good together.
Yeah, I think they could still work together. But the whole point was I want to take a taste. I just got to do it in such a way that I'm not going to make too much of a mess. Because, you know, I'm prone to making messes here. It's very liquidy. Oh my God, that is really good maple syrup. Wow. You want to try some? Yeah,
just
have
a
to.
Little bit. Just a little bit.
Oh, come on. Live a little. That is a little. It's unique. Mm-hmm. It does have a little bit of a smoky thing going for it, which I think is really cool. The smoky thing, I like that.
I want to glaze some sweet potatoes with this.
Did you seriously just say that you want to put maple syrup on sweet potato?
I did. Is that wrong?
It's okay. It's not something I like to do. We can try it. I mean, if you want to.
And they're all going to be for me, apparently.
No, I'll eat them. With this on it, I'll eat them. So before we get too into this, let me explain what an Acerglyn is. Okay, an Acerglyn is a mead that has maple syrup in it. Now, in order to be classified technically as a mead, it must contain 50% of the fermentables from honey, which means you can't have mostly maple syrup. It has to be mostly honey. Now, maple syrup runs about the same specific gravity as honey, which is 0.035 points of specific gravity, or 0.035 specific gravity per pound in a gallon of must. We are making a 1 gallon brewed size today because that's what we normally do. It will be in this fermenter right here. So if I know I want to use about 3 pounds of fermentables, period, I'm going to say, well, if I went half, it'd be 1.5 each, right? So what if I did 1 3/4 honey and 1 1/4 maple syrup? That way we're pretty well covered. I'm also expecting to have to add maple syrup in conditioning. Now, this is where it gets a little bit sticky. Some people will say, well, if you put more maple syrup in the secondary phase, that makes it not a mead anymore. I'm going to argue with that a little bit because it's fermented. Now, in conditioning, just for back sweetening it, it's not being fermented. So even if I end up putting more than another ½ pound of maple syrup in later, it's still a mead. Well,
granted, all of this is technicalities and naming conventions placed by...
It's not like the mead police are going to knock on your door.
Authorities. You know? So it's your mead. Make it the way you want.
Exactly. But what I do want to do is get my scale going here. That is tared out, which means zeroed. And let's just make some room here so we can.
So we're going to start with the thicker of the two, which is going to be the honey.
By the way, all the stuff that you see here, you can see there's some foam in here, and there was liquid coming off of that. All these things have been sanitized in the red bucket of sanitization, also known as turbos, or just the bucket that holds star sand. Okay, it's just off camera. You can't really see it. It's large. It's like 10 gallons or 12 gallons. And we just have a tub of star sand in there. We put everything in there. We take it out. We let it air dry. And when we're done, we dump it out because it went cloudy, which means it loses its effectiveness. That's important. Most people think that they can just keep this stuff. That worries me a little bit. I'd much rather just make up a new batch each time. It's really not that expensive when you go that way. I mean, the large bottle of it lasts us like a year and a half. So
and that's because you dilute it. So make sure that you do dilute it and follow the instructions on your container.
Follow the manufacturer's suggested directions. Don't be like me and not follow instructions. Okay, so I am going to tear it out again because I added the funnel. We're going to put in 1 3/4 pounds of the honey. So that was 1 pound, 12 ounces for those using the imperial system. I'll have a metric equivalent right in here. Now, because it pours so slow and we didn't heat it previously, I'm going to give this a minute because that funnel is full to about there with honey. So I don't want to pour maple syrup on top of there and have it flow over the sides. We've had that happen before. All right, so we utilized that time and Derek got us some, it feels like warm water, probably about 100 to 110 degrees, which is great water to mix with the honey and the maple syrup to help everything get flowing together. But now we're going to add our maple syrup. And if you recall, we're doing 1 1/4 pounds, which is 1 pound, 4 ounces, and the metric equivalent will be right here. All right, so we have our honey and maple syrup in there. And now I have here a cup of black tea, and it's just basic black tea. It's actually Irish breakfast, I believe, but it doesn't really matter what kind of black tea as long as you use black tea. A lot of people want to use all these, that's pretty hot. People ask me all the time, can I use bergamot tea? Can I use this tea? Can I use that tea? You can use any kind of tea you want. It's your mead. However, if you want to make something that resembles what we're making, you want to use just a straight up black tea because it's not really there for flavor. It's there for the tannic aspect. And a lot of people seem to misunderstand that. So I'm also pouring it in with it being hot so that I can take some of the extra honey and whatnot off of my funnel. And you just got to spin it around a little bit. Be careful so you don't spill it and burn yourself or, get tea all over the table. That should do. One of these days, we'll probably use a different kind of cup so that it's easier to pour. But we like using the City Steading mug. Okay, so at this point, we have maple syrup and honey and tea in here. Not a lot to mix up yet. I put the funnel in there. I know. Don't worry about it. And I'm going to pour some water in here. I know somebody's going, why did you put the funnel in there? Because I'm a natural blonde, okay? That's why. Plus, I can do this. And in the very beginning phase, it is perfectly fine to get oxygen into this brew. It's actually a good thing. You want to do it because it helps build the colony, okay? The yeast will build a colony by using that oxygen. Once the oxygen is depleted is when they get to work making alcohol. So a lot of people get that confused too. And I'm just going to stop talking because with the water running and stuff, you probably can't hear me anyway. But once you get to about the halfway point, get a full stopper, stick it in there, and I like to give this a really good shake. And what I mean by a good shake is really shake the bejesus out of it. By the way, what is bejesus? It's just a word. It's nothing. Doesn't mean anything. It's just you want to shake the crap out of it, okay? Does that work better? Notice the color change. Oxygenation at work. And I do it with half full because it's a lot easier to shake up. If you try filling the whole thing, there's not a lot of oxygen in there. It makes it really, really hard to mix. Okay, now that I have it mixed up pretty good, I'm going to put in the rest of my water. So at this point, you can see I put liquid to about here. Where the shoulder starts to go up, there's a lot of foam, okay? If I go too much further than that, when this starts going, it could push it up into the airlock. It might anyway, but it's like a balancing act. You want to get the most product you can, but you don't want to lose too much through the airlock. You understand. So also right now, before I take a reading, I want to mix this up. So I'm going to get the bung again, stick it back in. And this isn't as thorough of a mixing, but you still want to there's a little bejesus in there. We want to get it up. Thoroughly mixed. So now I want to take a reading. And when I say take a reading, I mean a hydrometer reading the specific gravity of the must. You might be wondering why we take specific gravity readings at all. Obviously, the actual alcohol content isn't critical, but it's nice to know. But it's really more to know, like, are we overshooting what our yeast is capable of? Did we mix it properly? Are we making another mistake that we just can't tell because we didn't take a reading? There's a lot of ways that things can go kind of pear-shaped on you. So you want to make sure that you have all the help you can get. Okay, so we are using a Herculometer, which is the plastic hydrometer. We did a video on these and found that they are just as accurate as the glass one we were using all along. It's a little bit easier to read and definitely going to be harder to break. Watch for a video on just how hard they are to break coming soon. And I'm getting 1.092 from this. So that tells me that our maple syrup was probably a little bit less gravity than, say, the honey was. And they do range. And that's why I said it's usually about the same. But sometimes they can be as low as 0.025. I've heard of some that were in the 30s and that kind of thing. So it's not super critical, but 1.092, that's pretty respectable to start.
So at this point, it's a good time to start taking notes if you haven't already done so.
I have a piece of paper. I have a pen. My notes. What do I put on my notes? For one, I'm going to say Acerglyn 2.0. Okay?
Today's date.
Today is August 20th, 2021. I'm going to write my gravity reading at this point so I don't forget it mostly. That's 1.092. Then I write in what I added. So for this one, it was 1.75 pounds of orange blossom honey and 1.25 pounds of maple syrup and 1 cup of black tea. Now, I say 1 cup is a mug. That mug is probably something like 10 or 12 ounces. So it's a little bit more than a cup. Like if you're using a cup as a measuring device, the actual amount is not that critical though. You can do it with a half a cup. You can do it with 2 cups because the tea fills up the whole space. So it's not as super critical to know exactly how much liquid, but that's important to know. At this point, we just want to make sure, and it is, you want to make sure you are 110 degrees or lower. Ideally, you want to be around 90 to 100 degrees, or, that's really your maximum temperature.
And that's Fahrenheit.
Yes, that is Fahrenheit. Don't do that in Celsius. You will burn the heck out of your Acerglyn and you will kill everything that you try to make happen. Then the next aspect that we need to add is yeast. For this, I'm going to be using 71B. Why am I using 71B? Well, because A, we know it's a proven performer. B, I know that it can handle a 1.092 gravity and then some. And C, it actually works really, really well in our exact temperature zone. Our house is generally around 79 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is with air conditioning running. This is Florida. And this yeast works really, really well in that temperature range. You may find one that works well for you. You may need to adjust recipes to make it work the most effectively for you. I'm expecting this to go pretty much dry, and we'll probably end up back sweetening with more maple syrup, like I said. Also, thwack your yeast packets. It's very important. See? Got to get them all out. They stick to the sides and everything. Now, once you get it in there, I just give it a little swirl to break up the yeast a little bit. You don't really have to mix it so much. Just break it up. You don't even actually really have to do that. I just like to mess with things, okay? I'll just be totally honest. And then, at this point, we're going to put an airlock on this. So yeah, airlock. Boom. We want to seal this up. The airlock allows gases to escape. They go up, they come down, they go out. And it's already showing positive pressure, but that's probably because I just pushed it down and it just forces a little bit of the air in there. This will sit for a couple hours, couple days, and we'll be back to show you when it starts activating. So it's been like half an hour. It's already going. There's plenty of activity. And I know it could seem weird that we get that much activity so quickly. Our house is warm, 79 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. We're using a warm liquid, not hot, but warm. It's probably around 100 to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Those two factors alone tend to work well. Plus, our gravity is not super sky high. It's 1.092. That gives the yeast a lot to play with. T does give a little tiny bit of a boost for the yeast. It's not a huge amount, but it does help a little bit. But I just wanted to talk about that because it can take up to 3 days for this to get to this point. So don't freak out. It probably means put it in a little bit of warmer place, and it's probably going to work just fine. Anyway, let's take a look inside, see how this is going.
Okay, so here's the airlock, and you can see we have some bubble activity. This is completely normal and something that you're looking for because it shows that there is a gas distribution going on, which means either something is fermenting or something did ferment at one time and gas is being released. Further down, we see a collection of bubbles on the surface of our wort? Is this wort? Must. I get the terms confused.
Wort is for beer. Right. Must is for wine.
Right.
Since mead is it's closer to a wine than it is to a beer, depending on who you talk to, I go with must.
Okay, so you see some foam, some bubbles on the surface of our must. That too is completely normal and something that you would expect to find at this stage of fermentation. Farther down, you may or may not see slight particles floating around. Those are actually the yeast particles. There was some movement earlier. It looks like they're kind of just hanging out right now, but we term that movement that you see the lava lamp effect. It's just something that we use because that's kind of what it looks like to us. But basically, because there's activity going on inside your must and gas is being released, there will be a slight bit of turbulence, and that too is normal.
So essentially, this looks healthy, looks good, looks like it's supposed to. This foam will probably dissipate over time. Some of it will stick to the sides of the fermenter and form what's called a Kreusen line, Kreusen. It's not a necessary thing. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
It's just a thing.
A thing. Yeah. It happens sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. Don't freak out if it doesn't, and don't freak out if it does. It is basically just dried foam. Okay. But this is going to go for probably a couple of weeks. I would imagine this one might take a little while. And once we start seeing a lot of airlock activity slowing down where it doesn't look like it's doing much anymore, then we'll take another reading. So how about that Acerglyn? Well, here's the thing. We recorded an entire video of us taking the first reading of this Acerglyn. However, the microphone decided it was its day off. Actually, the cable went bad, and, well, that unfortunately happens. And since we record more than one video in a day, well, a couple of videos are affected. So we're just going to talk about it. Because what we did on this one is we took a reading of it, and we didn't taste it or anything, and the reading was 1.010. And then I did a lot of this. I shook it up and got some gas to come out.
Like that?
Like that. There was more.
Like that.
And then we put the airlock back on and it's going to sit for a while. So there you go. So here we are now, 9 more days later. We're going to take its second reading and just move on from there. All right. So as always, we're going to take a hydrometer reading. And that just means taking the super sucker. Still really not crazy about that name, but it's the best I got until somebody gives me a better one. And I'm going to just pull a sample out. Now, I can tell already this has a lot of gas in it. There's a lot of CO2 that needs to come out of here. It was at 1.010 last time we checked it. Hopefully it's not moved, but if it has, that's okay. We'll just let it go for another week, take another reading, and make sure that it's really finished. It seems like it should be pretty close to being done anyway. It was 71B yeast, started at a 1.092. That has potential to go to the max the yeast can handle, or close to it. She's just afraid that it's going to pop out and squirt all over the place. You know, not like that's ever happened before. The comment section is going to love that one. Okay, it's reading 1.002. It was at 1.010. Now it's at 1.002. This is one of those situations where you have to make a judgment call. Could I let this go for another week before we rack it? Yes, I totally could. However, I think it's so close to being done that it's fine. It did go down 8 more points, making me go, will it go down some more? How much more can it really go down? Let's find out what the ABV is, and maybe that can help determine. So if we started with a 1.092 and we're down to 1.002, that's 0.09 or 90 points of gravity times 135. We are at 12%. It is possible for 71B to go higher than that. There's not a lot of sugars left though. However, because ethanol is actually a lower density than water, it could go down to like 0.996, 0.995 even. I'm not sure how far it would really go because there's only so much alcohol there.
So why don't we just let it do its thing?
Yeah. In this case, I think I'm going to pour the sample back in, which is okay to do as long as you're careful. You don't want to splash it. You don't want to get crazy.
And of course, you want to make sure all your utensils have been sanitized.
So I'm just pouring it carefully down the side a little bit. This is one of those cases where rushing wouldn't help, but letting it sit doesn't hurt in any way. The only thing it does is delays our production schedule. That's all it really does. And, we can deal with that. It's okay. So I'm just going to put the airlock right back on. Will it stay? Is it safe? Yes, there we go. Okay. One thing I would like to do, though, is give this a really good swirl. Now that it's going to sit for another week, I'm going to shake it up real good and get some of the gases out of it.
He's not going to shake it. He's going to swirl it. And there's a difference between shaking and swirling, is that you want to get the gas out rather than introducing gas in.
Right. I'm not adding oxygen to this. You might think that some of the oxygen that was in there is going to get mixed in. Very minimal amount of that will, but mostly what's happening is CO2 is coming out of this solution, and because it is heavier than oxygen, it's forcing the oxygen out.
We also are helping with that process by having our airlock in place so that way gas can't come back in to the closed circuit.
That's part of why I'm doing this too, is to make sure that any air that might have got put in there is being forced right back out. So it's all good. And you can see the airlock kind of going nuts. The bubbler is just doing its thing because that's gases, trapped gases, all coming out. And you can do this as long as you want to. I'm not going to do it that long. Today is not arm day. That's it. That's all I'm doing. I got to take my notes. Wipe off the table. Cleanliness. It's important. My note goes back on. This goes back into the fermentation station for another week, and we'll be back at that point with another reading.
It's been 13 days, and now it's time to move forward.
As we always do, we're going to take a reading just to see what it's doing. Now, we did a reading on, it was like 3 weeks ago. It was 1.010. Then the last time it was 1.002. So because it was still dropping, we decided to wait some time. We didn't mean to wait 13 days. We meant to wait 7. But, we got a new kitten who took up all of our time. So it turned into 13 days. But anyway, we're here now and we're going to do it.
If you like kittens, check out City Steading on YouTube.
Yes, we actually made a channel called City Steading. It's a thing. So this, formerly known as the Todd, is actually now going to be called Mega Mead. Let's see how many people get the reference. I'm hoping we can maybe rack and bottle this today, believe it or not. We might be at that point. All right, so our final gravity reading is 1.002. Let me do a little bit of calculation and I'll tell you what our ABV is going to be. Because this is now done. We have the same reading over a period of at least 1 week. It's actually been over 13 days. Okay, so we started with a 1.092 original gravity. So let me punch that in. Minus our 1.002 final gravity gives me 0.09. Multiply that by 135. Some people use 131.25. I use 135. We have a whole video on that, which might be a tag right here. And when I do that, we get 12.15. I'm going to round that off to say 12% because that's close enough for me. So 12%, pretty respectable. But how does it taste? Now, this was started August 20th. Today is September 21st. This is now 4 weeks old. I have my doubts that it's going to be great, but it's always good to taste what you're making so that you kind of have an idea of where it's going and see, do we need to make any adjustments? Does it need anything?
A note about tasting young meads. Once you've gotten into the hobby for a while and you've done this multiple times, you will learn to differentiate. I can't say that word, but you know what I'm talking about.
Differentiate.
Thank you. Between the flavor flavors that are inherent in the youth of the brew and the flavors that are inherent in the brew itself. And you'll be able to separate that and go, okay, that's just the youngness over here, but this is what's really going on. And we have found that we have gotten to that level where we can normally have a pretty good idea.
And kind of see behind the youngness of it to see the potential.
Yes. We see the man behind the curtain.
Okay, this is honey, maple syrup, black tea, and yeast. And at 4 weeks, I'm going to let her make an assessment.
4 weeks, that's smelling good.
It smells nice for 4 weeks. I mean,
wow.
There's a youngness there. But I smell maple syrup. I smell honey. I smell almost a spice.
Well, I almost smell like fruit, like a wine.
Yeah, I was going to say floral.
Like it's making me think of something juicy.
Okay, I guess I get to do the first taste. Now, this is quite dry at 1.002. And again, it's very young. But that is totally drinkable as is. I enjoy that. I like that. I think with some age, this will be incredible. I was totally thinking, we're going to have to add tons more maple syrup to this.
I don't think it's necessary.
No, we do not need to back sweeten this. This is beautiful.
Wow.
Shocking. We were like, okay, so we're going to have to pasteurize. We're going to have to add more. Nope. I don't think it's necessary at all.
So we were trying to figure out how many bottles we were going to need because bottling is what's coming next.
I think we need another taste.
And we were already planning to have to add a bunch of stuff to this.
Yeah, we may need less bottles now.
I don't think it's necessary at all. I'm pleasantly surprised.
This is amazing because, this hobby just blows my mind sometimes. I have heard so many things about making Acerglyns and the maple syrup flavor doesn't come through and you have to back sweeten a ton and you have to do this and you have to do that. And I looked up ratios of maple syrup to honey and back and forth. And I came on just, okay, we're going to use 1.75 pounds of honey and 1.25 pounds of maple syrup because I wanted to keep the fermentables on the honey side rather than the maple syrup side. But this is maple syrup forward, not honey forward. Yeah. I actually taste the maple syrup. The smell is actually really nice. It's growing on me. The more I smell it, the better I like it.
Yeah, the smell is really good. The flavor is good, but it's not as...
It tastes far sweeter than 1.002.
It does.
Wow, it tastes more like 1.010 to 1.014, somewhere in that range. It definitely has more sweetness. And what it really tastes like to me is a nice white wine with maple syrup notes. That's exactly what I'm tasting.
Yeah.
I'm not getting as much of the youngness or anything like that. This is a wonderful thing. Totally beats the one that we did with the leaves.
So Adam, we see what you're talking about now.
Yeah, Adam, one of our moderators, wanted us to make this. And wow, he was so totally right. This is beautiful. So we're going to rack this to the pitcher because I already started using the pitcher. Normally we could just rack it right into bottles. But there is some sediment at the bottom here. I'd like to get it off of that, and we'll go from there. By the way, you might have noticed this never went into conditioning. A lot of people have been asking, do I have to rack it? Do I have to do this? No, you absolutely don't, but it is kind of recommended. This one sat for a month in primary, so we're going to rack it off the lees into here, and we're going to put it right into bottles. There's nothing wrong with that. The clarity on this is acceptable. I wouldn't call it great. It probably will clear more in the bottle, but that's all right. We want to be able to get this series of videos out to you guys and show you that you can change it up. You don't have to always do every single thing. A lot of people have been telling me, I only have one fermenter. How do I rack it? Oh, okay. Here's one way to handle that.
So I know our method here may be confusing some of you at home, and so I want to clarify some things. First of all, you may think,
what's confusing?
Oh my gosh, you guys rushed this, didn't you? Well, sort of, but not really. Because, as many of you know, we really don't care about clarity. And because we are producing this primarily for your benefit, we did speed things up. We did.
We skipped a step.
But
it's like intentional.
So ideally, we would have let this sit again and then rack it a second time. So that way we wouldn't end up inadvertently getting some sediment perhaps settling out in our bottles. But that really isn't that important. So if you have the time, I would say go ahead and do that and let it sit some more. But if you need to get something out for a present ASAP, or you have an event, you can do this. Your priority number one is it finished fermenting?
Yes.
And your secondary primary number two is does it taste good?
Right.
So both of those boxes were checked, and that's why we've gone for it.
A little perspective on this too. And this goes along with what she's saying. If we let this sit in conditioning phase, by the way, I'm going to remove the cap for bottling this time, because this prevents it from going all the way to the bottom, and I don't want to waste any. If we were to let this sit in conditioning or secondary fermentation, however you want to call it, at the end, we'd have a little bit of wastage. Well, if I don't do that and I put it into the bottles and those bottles get a little bit of sediment, at the end of the bottle, we'll have a little bit of wastage. You get the waste either way. It actually doesn't change anything. The main difference is what it looks like in the bottle. That's about it.
Also, bottles are designed with this tapered neck, and that's when you pour it. If you pour it gently, any sediment that has occurred is going to be collected here, while the clear liquid will go through the neck portion into your drinking vessel. So they're built to help deal with that issue.
If you're unsure how to rack or bottle your brews, we have videos on that. So we're just going to kind of fast forward through this part. All right, so we ended up with 4 bottles and this wee little bit in this bottle right here. That's enough to do a tasting with. Now, I want to show you guys something. We talked about clarity a little bit. Let me get out the white card so I can show you. This is what we mean by not really all that clear.
It's still pretty clear, though.
Like on a scale of 1 to 10 for clarity, it's like a 6 to a 7. I mean, it's not horrible. It's definitely not perfectly clear, but it's not bad for 4 weeks either. It will probably clear over time. And even if it doesn't, I don't really care. It's not chunky. That's the key. It's not like thick. Like, you can still see through it. You can see your hand behind it. That's fine. Now, this bottle here, this is the question. You do not want to leave this at room temperature. We are going to do the tasting video right after this. So this will get drank right away. No worries. Otherwise, this will go into the refrigerator, where that way we don't add extra oxidization and possibly ruin that brew. As for the rest of them, someone's going to ask, why didn't we degas? That's a really good question.
The honest answer would be we forgot.
Yeah. In doing the skip, because I thought, let's show them how to just skip over it. And as we're bottling it, I went, I'm seeing a couple of little bubbles coming up. But we did something, a little test, okay? These bottles are not made to hold carbonation. We normally use our flip tops, and those would be fine. I wouldn't even be concerned. Whatever, it'll be a little petulant. In the taste, it wasn't petulant at all. Petulant, by the way, means very mildly carbonated, okay? But what I can do is give this like a shake, which I know somebody's going to freak out that I'm adding oxygen, but I want to open that up. Hear how little of a gas release there was to that? Almost nothing. To me, that's not a worry. If I heard a psss as I did that, I would probably put these back into the pitcher, degas, and then bottle. Or keep them all refrigerated, because that would mean the gases coming out could explode the bottle, okay? Because these bottles aren't made for pressure. Again, if they were pressured bottles, don't even worry about it. They'd be fine. No worries at all.
We are going to store these in a cool, dry place. Cool, dark place. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Dry
too,
preferably.
though. Although I guess if you kept the neck out, you could store it in water. I don't think it would really matter. It would keep the temperature more constant.
But we're going to keep them close by, so that way we can take a peek on them, release any pressure that may have occurred.
For the first few days at least.
And that way we won't have to worry about it.
Also, another note about what we're going to do with these. People ask all the time, how long can these last and how do you store them? Well, I'm going to make a masking tape label, because that's what we do. These are for our own internal use. We're not giving them as gifts. If I was going to give this as a gift, I probably would use a different bottle with a cork and I'd make fancy label. Well, Derica would make fancy labels and we'd do it up. You know what I mean? But when it's for yourself, it's up to you. You can go as crazy as you want. We tend to just use masking tape. It comes right back off really simple so that when this bottle gets emptied, you know, like next week, we can just put a new label on it and bottle something else in it because this is good. I don't think it's going to last real long, but what's going to happen is one bottle will get labeled as 1 year. So 1 year from today, we will open, well, around a year, we will open that up and do our 1 year age tasting of it. Another bottle, well, the other three, we're probably just going to drink them. I mean, I'll be honest with you. We're probably just going to drink them. I might want this to sit a little bit before we start drinking it, but this is good enough to drink as is right now. That's kind of shocking. But in the tasting video, we'll go over the notes on that and really get into it.
It's time to taste the Acerglyn 2021.
Now, don't let the mostly empty bottle fool you. We did not drink this ahead of time. We just finished the racking and bottling of this, and this was the last bottle. So there's just a little bit there. Makes it very convenient to do the tasting with. No big deal. So this ended at 12%. Pretty respectable. We were thinking we were going to have to back sweeten. It ended at 1.002. So right away you go, ooh, that's going to be dry. Yeah, well, guess what? It wasn't as dry as we thought. So let's get into it. First thing we want to do is the card test.
Card test.
The card's getting harder and harder to pull out all the time. It gets stuck up under the shell. Okay. So there you go. You can see the clarity on this, not 100% clear. Okay. It's not horrible.
But it's not like a murky swamp.
No, it's really not at all. It's just got a little bit of a haze to it. And I think that will clear in time.
The color itself is pretty similar to what you'd expect a mead to look like.
Yep. What is a mead?
Yes, but I mean, the maple didn't change the color all that much. And I think that's because if you think about maple syrup, it's kind of mead colored anyway. So
Yeah. On the smell, I get maple syrup, a little bit of honey, getting a little bit of the ethanol that I didn't get in the other video, but now that we're using the right kind of glasses to do this, I can get a little bit different aromas out of it. It's not unpleasant at all. It's actually quite pleasant for 4 weeks old.
I get a juicy fruit sensation.
Yeah, you said that last time.
And I'm getting a little bit of the floral notes.
You know what I get? You know that sweet, tangy smell? You described it in a recent video.
Of natural fermented?
Of natural fermented fruit sitting on the ground. That's what I actually smell here. Like if you were in an apple orchard or something like that and the fruit fell on the ground and it started fermenting, rotting, some people would say, but it's actually fermenting. I get a little bit of that smell.
Like our grape arbor in August?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. We spend a lot of time doing the aroma because that's half of your taste. So if it smells good, you're probably going to enjoy it more. And I'm actually salivating smelling it.
Yes. It's an interesting thing compared to our little mini taste that we took at the end of the finishing video because we weren't using the right style of glass. And this base of the glass is called a tulip shape, and as you can see, it's a tulip shape.
They're Glencairn glasses.
And so it helps focus the aromas
doing this
towards the top, and then when you swirl,
it makes a wind turbine.
Yeah,
it just swirls right up, goes right up your nostrils.
I'm getting some more aromas with this presentation than I was in the other. And I'm actually getting more of the youth now.
Yeah, a little bit. It's a little harsher than I remember it just from, half an hour ago when we did the other video. But it's not bad. I get that fermented fruit smell. I'm also getting just a touch of like a spice. I want to say like allspice. It's not cinnamon. It's not anything. It's allspice. And it's not in there, but I'm getting a little bit of it. And a floral fruity thing.
Yeah, like orange blossom.
Yeah. Well, it is orange blossom honey.
There you go.
So there you go. I remember. But yeah, on the scent, this is actually really, really good for 4 weeks old. Now, something about that too. We know this is 4 weeks old. So when we do a tasting like this is based on it being 4 weeks old. If we judge this based on, oh, this is aged in a fine wine and all that, it'd be a little bit different. Yeah. So if we seem a little bit overzealous, it's mostly because this is 4 weeks old and smells pretty darn good. I mean, that's the gist, okay? Is this drinkable now? I think so. Let's find out. Short sip time. What that means is you're going to acclimate your body to the flavors and the alcohol within this beverage. It is 12%. You want to do that. Just get it in and drink it down. My initial reaction is I get a little bit of sweetness from it. It tastes like honey and maple syrup combined. It really does. Just that little hint with a little bit of a white wine. Mm-hmm. I do get the tiniest hint of that bitterness at the back of the throat that I get from Mead. There's a good mouth-filling feeling to it. It's got viscosity to it. Everything about it tastes quite balanced. I think the tea was necessary. It might be slightly light on tannins, but it's not bad. There's enough acidity and brightness that it kind of balances out. It's for 4 weeks old. I'm actually really impressed.
Yeah.
Just keep smelling it.
Yeah, for a short sip, there was a lot going on there, which we found out in the finishing video. Again, I'm sorry I keep referring to it, but it was shocking. And so, because we're fresh off that,
yeah,
it's not
literally
shocking
like half an hour ago
now. But I think if we waited just even a week and tasted this again, it would be like,
yeah,
wow, this is so good. How did that happen?
And now what we want to do, now that we've acclimated, is a long sip where you hold it in your mouth for a few seconds, really get to taste everything, and then we can describe what we're getting from it. I'm going to let you go first, but that did not disappoint.
The first thing that I'm getting actually is the texture. It has a viscosity to it that isn't cloying.
Yeah.
But it's definitely there. It's coating, it's soothing, it's relieving. And then right from that tactile sensation, I go into sweetness. And because I know that this ended at 1.002, right? That sweetness just shocks me. It's like, why are you there? But you're there, and it's delightful and it's wonderful. It's not like super hurt your jaw sweetness. It's just a nice, pleasant honey maple syrup sweetness. Something that you would expect to be in something that's primarily made of honey and maple syrup. Surprise! But then it goes into kind of a white wine motif. And Brian mentioned this before. Again,
in the other video.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched it, just go watch it. We'll still be here.
And that's where you get the dryness, but it reads more of a white wine rather than this is dry.
Yeah.
Because it comes after the sweetness that you get initially. So I'm kind of confused chemically how that's occurring.
Yeah.
But it's really nice, so I'm not upset by it.
On the entrance, I definitely get the sweetness right away. A little bit of an orange citrus hit. I taste the maple syrup. This is maple syrup, not just honey. I taste honey right after the maple syrup. And then there's almost like a little bit of a bitterness. And that's why I say the tannins, it could use more, but I don't want to add more because I think that bitterness actually cut back a bit. Because otherwise this would taste super sweet even at 2 points above neutral. The finish on this is long. And on the exhale, I'm still getting that kind of a maple syrup, floral, fermented fruit kind of thing for a long time after finishing the sip. It's really incredible. The complexity and depth to this is shocking. I did not expect it at all. I mean, I didn't know what to expect really. Not had a lot of Acerglyns in my time, but I don't remember them being quite this complex. I'm not saying that this was better than the ones that I've had commercially or that kind of thing, but this was definitely more complex, had more going on, more, when we say complexity and depth of flavor, we actually mean how many layers, how much of an onion is it? Or how much of an ogre is it? Essentially, it means, is it one note? Is there a chord? Is it multiple notes? And there's a difference between a chord and multiple notes. Multiple notes can be discordant, and then when they play together, it's a chord. Right now, this is in between a bunch of notes and a chord, and that you were kind of getting there. I think I was waiting for you to say it, where they haven't melded yet. It's kind of, you can taste different things and you can pick them out really easily. They work well enough together that it's not totally chaotic, but it's not fully melded and blended together and mellowed. I think with a few months and then the 1 year, this is going to be amazing. Like, this could be one of my top 5 favorites. It very easily. And it's the driest thing I have made in a long time. But wow, at 4 weeks, it's actually drinkable now.
Yeah.
I would totally drink this now.
All right, so do we want to wait to talk about improvements till after we give our score, right?
Yeah, we want to talk about food pairings.
Okay, so food pairings. Let's jump right in.
This is white wine. Treat it like white wine.
Yeah.
I would cook with it. I would put it in sauces. I would drink it with foods like that.
Yeah.
Treat it like a white wine. Yeah. That's an easy way to say it.
I can see this being paired with the artichoke pasta recipe.
Yes, very easily. We did that video. Yeah, that's on our other channel. This could go with any number of foods. I mean, anything, like I said, anything you'd have white wine with. But does it also go by itself? Absolutely. This stands up on its own. That's my preferred way to drink it, actually.
Yeah.
I would probably put only about 5 ounces into a glass and sip that over the course of a couple hours through an evening. It just has so many things going on. It's like an exploration with every sip. And the more I drink of this one, this is something I noticed in the last video, just taking more sips of it, I seem to find more, and anything slightly objectionable starts to fade a bit more. And it's not that I'm getting drunk,
right? Because
I've literally had, if I fill this glass, this much of it at 12%, that can't possibly have an intoxication effect yet.
I think it's similar to the effect that you have when you take your short sip, is that some of those harsher notes you become more acclimated to, and so other things can shine through that you may have overlooked. Words.
But yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to say on this one anymore. There's so many different notes to it. Everything from the citrusy note to the floral note to the fruity note, the maple syrup, which is just lovely. The smokiness of the maple syrup did not actually come through. I remember when we were making this, we used a maple syrup that tasted and smelled a little smoky. That doesn't seem to have come through.
If we didn't have the sweetness that we didn't expect, but was in there, then we were going to go ahead and back sweeten this with maple syrup, and that may have bumped up the smokiness. So if you were thinking about making this and you wanted to push the smokiness, that would be my suggestion. But you want to be careful because it might bump up the sweetness to
too much,
kind of a sickly level that may not be very palatable.
A note on sweetness levels: it's all to taste. Okay, we like it this way. Some people might want it drier. Some people might want it sweeter, and that's totally okay. You're allowed to have it however you like. That's the only real rule about making your own homebrew, is make it how you like it. As long as it's safe to do and others enjoy it and you enjoy it and you like the process, you did it right. Okay. For us, though, I try to keep the sweetness levels down as much as possible because there's just no reason to have more sugar in your system than you really need to. So if it's good this way, there's no reason to make it sweeter just for the sake of making it sweeter. So that's kind of the say on there. But we need to chill this.
We do.
We need to give a score first.
We need to give it numbers.
I am a natural blonde.
I am ready.
I have to think about it. Because I'm between a couple. There's a few ways to go about this. While I'm thinking, yes, I can do more than one thing at once. Let me go over our scoring system. It goes from 1 to 10, and we use half points. 1 means I would not drink this. It's possibly toxic, and I wouldn't even give it to my worst enemy. Okay. We're joking, but that's the gist. 5 means I would drink that. I would choose it over other things. It might not be my first choice, but I would totally drink it. Below 5 is probably like, do I want to drink that bad? Okay. 10 means It's the grand pinnacle of perfection. Couldn't dream of improving it in any way. There's nothing unpleasant. If you were to make this again, you would make it exactly the same. You would want it to come out exactly the same way. That's a 10, okay? It's a relatively hard score to achieve. We've given out a few. Not a lot, but a few. All right. Are you ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 7. Ha! We died. All right.
So the reason why I gave it a 7, and I'm just going to go ahead because I'm used to going ahead because normally I score low, is that as much as I'm appreciating this, it's reminding me of a song, and I'm really irritated because I can't think of the song, and we're filming right now, so I can't go onto my phone and try to figure out what the song is called.
That's why she has her hands under the table so that she's not
I'm restraining
reaching for
myself.
her phone. It's right there.
But I believe it's from the Phantom of the Opera, and because Brian's a fan of Phantom of the Opera, he probably will know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's a part in the song, and it's played on an organ, and they do note, chord. And so it's very dark and mysterious. And
actually,
it's
chord. No. But anyway.
I thought it was no, chord. Anyway.
It's the main theme song from Phantom of the Opera.
And so I feel like it's those notes and then that force code and that's chord. Force chord. Yes.
This is our first tasting of the day. No, we are not drunk.
I'm a spaz and words are not my friend. Numbers are not my friend. I don't know what is my friend.
We don't actually get drunk anymore.
So I feel like this has so much potential because there's so much that I'm enjoying about it, but it's just not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Yes, I know it's very young, so aging might be the magic bullet that needs to occur, as is the way most of the time. But because we had such wonderful results with our beloved French oak, my mind immediately goes to, we can French oak this.
I was wondering about that too. I might take a French oak strip and drop it in one of the bottles, like split it in half and drop it in one of the bottles just to see. Couldn't hurt. I mean, it might be a nice thing to do. Maybe I actually will do that. Okay, I gave it a 7 because I start at 10 and go down. She tends to start at 0 and goes up. Probably 5 and goes up or down, depending.
I go 5 and go up and down.
I start at 10 and work backwards. And the first thing that got me was, this is young. I can still tell that it's young. It tastes good, and there's nothing truly unsettling or unpleasant about it or off-putting about it, but it's not all there, as she said. The notes just are kind of floating around. They're not really melded together. It's not a cohesive beverage yet. So to me, that just starts knocking points off left and right. And then that bitterness, it's a strong bitterness that I want that sweetness to carry through on the bitterness too, so that the flavors meld better. I think time will actually do that. I keep saying meld and mellow, but that's exactly what this needs.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it dropped down to a 7. I started looking at it and I said, okay, would I make this a 5? No, I would choose this over many things that we've made.
Even at this stage.
Yes, right now, I would choose this over several things that we have made. Is this a 6? Is it just a little bit better than those? No, I think it's significantly better than those. So that's when I went 7. But I started thinking, well, is this an 8? Not quite. Yeah. I don't think it's quite. I almost went 7.5, but I ended up going with 7 because I've just felt like this has some room for improvement, and I think it's going to get there. I think this has huge potential to be in the 9 and higher after a year. But like I said a few minutes ago, we need to chill this and see if it changes anything. All right, so it's been chilled. It's sitting on our steel chillers, which we determined work better than the stone ones that we bought. They're bigger too, so I'm thinking that's probably why. But let this go for a few seconds. It's a overly hefty pour there, but it's okay. This is the only tasting we're doing today, I think. No, we have one more. We have one more. Anyway, I'll go first, just 'cause. I need to check that again for science. that got better.
I think it fixed it.
That little bit of roughness after the sweetness, now the sweetness carries through. It brought the maple syrup flavor
It kind
out.
of just blends it all together.
It took down that bitter note that was in the middle and made everything else just work.
It's like we're seeing into the future.
And I taste more maple syrup now. Definitely taste more maple flavor.
The only thing that it removed that makes me sad is it's not as viscous.
Yeah, it did seem to make it watery. Now, it's not watered down because there's no actual ice in there. It's just colder. But it did take away a little bit of the viscosity, the mouthfeel. I will say that. And that could be, like I was saying before, it has the acidity, but not the tannins. So without the tannins, the acidity was the thing that made it have a viscous feel in the mouth. And now that that's gone.
But when you were talking about it before, and you're talking about that weird bitterness in the middle, I was reading that as a tea taste.
Oh.
And so
you were getting the tannic.
So I thought it was fine on tannins.
And it possibly is. Maybe I'm mistaking the acids for tannins.
Sure. And the strange thing about drinking an alcoholic beverage is that your brain is just trying to fill in the blanks. It's a Gestalt theory thing where we got this and we got this, and then we got to have to draw a line in between those two things.
I thought it was more like Schrodinger's cat. Is it really there or is it not really there?
Well, yes, but Schrodinger's cat, you don't know what's going on until you open the box, where Gestalt, you fill in the blanks.
Oh. Okay.
It's okay.
You can tell which one of us went to college, right?
I didn't mean to get deep on you here. But so we are working with our brain, trying to decipher the notes that we're getting from this beverage, regardless of whether those things are actually in it or not. And this happens a lot if you drink whiskey, which we used to enjoy a lot.
Yeah, your brain fills it in.
All sorts of crazy things.
Band-Aids.
Yeah.
There's no Band-Aid in
Tires.
that. Yeah.
It's just weird. But...
And funny enough, we liked those things.
Yeah.
Still do, actually.
But
This tastes so much sweeter than it is.
The reason why we're trying this on ice is because temperature change in an alcoholic beverage can turn down or amplify certain notes. Same with adding water to an alcoholic beverage, because there's certain flavors that are water soluble. So normally our experience when we chill a beverage is that it turns off some of the more pleasant notes and boosts some of the more negative notes.
Not this time.
This time it took those separate notes and it just kind of blended them together, which is what we were both looking for.
It didn't make it perfect. Don't get me wrong.
No. But
it improved it.
Yeah. And that is really exciting.
And that's the cool thing about this. You know, sometimes the cold will cover up things that you like. Sometimes it'll cover up things you don't like. It can make up for deficiencies in a brew, just like sweetness does. You know, temperature can have an effect that way.
It does seem across the board
less complex,
toned down. So
yeah, the flavor's not as strong.
It feels more like if you have an alcohol straight versus if you have an alcohol with like club soda added to it, where it just turns everything down.
I'm not noticing the ethanol as much either.
Yeah. No.
It definitely doesn't. I don't have that ethanol flavor anymore.
Yep.
It's still really, really good. Due to the fact that it did take it down a bit, that changes my score slightly, but I have another score.
I do too.
1, 2, 3, 7.5.
Now, I kept mine at 7. Yes, I'm low. Haha, surprise, surprise. Because I really enjoyed that it smoothed everything out, but I didn't enjoy that it toned everything down. But my enjoyment of those, and lack thereof, of those two things evened it out and kept it at the 7 that I originally gave it.
I can see that. And, you know, I was on the fence whether I changed my score or not. I think it slightly improved the experience of drinking it for me. And I looked at the overall experience. Like, do I like it better? Would I rather have it on ice than not? A little bit. Just a tiny bit more. I see all of your arguments and I completely agree, though.
Yep.
And there's just a little bit left. You may have it. But essentially, this is a really great beverage. We're looking forward to what this does in the future. We're also going to be revisiting this one with a tasting of a maple wine that you have yet to see, but it's sitting right over there behind the camera.
It's not done yet.
It's ready to be wrapped today, I think, but it's not actually finished yet. So you'll see that in a couple of weeks. And then we're going to do a tasting head-to-head of maple wine versus Acerglyn, just to see what's the differences. How are they together? Yeah. What makes one taste different than the other? We just thought that was kind of an interesting comparison. But anyway, see all these people over here? That is our VIP club. That is the Bejesus and Plaid level members. There's a lot more other members, and that forms a lovely community that we actually use a Facebook group for. And if you want more information, link in the description. If you like this video, though, look up. There's another one up there. You might like that one too.